Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 356 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we are going to try to eat a bunch of pollution using tree farms. Enjoy. So if we're going to farm something, what do we want to farm? Ideally something that is super easy to make, because making soil is actually fairly difficult, because that would require mud and then making a bunch of saline water. And this is still going at full blast, which is fantastic. It's supposed to go at full blast and use every last little bit of plastic. And it's just about doing that. But all these machines seem like they're running. Now the ones on the bottom aren't, but it's slightly too many machines, so it's never going to be fully saturated. But you can tell it's getting there, where this belt is almost full now. And 2,300 pollution now. And 4.2 gigawatts. Wow. And this is close enough to fully saturated for me. It doesn't have to be 100% compressed. Alright. This belt is full now. Does that mean we just filled up the warehouse? Or did it get blocked? Well, it's not going in there. It really should. Although, it could just be the stack size isn't letting it go in there. Yeah, of course, because it's low density structure. So, warehouse is full. That was that. It filled up. That was very fast. I approve. And almost, oh, I said almost at 3,000 pollution. It's above 3,000 now. And, oh, we just finished with the last accumulators, which means we're finally going to catch up on batteries. And everything's going to calm down here. 1.8 terajoules, that seems pretty good for now. But this is the worst part in the factory right here, this intermediates bus. I wasn't really thinking about that when I built it, but there's so much productivity modules here between all three of these batteries and that low density structure that is just insane in this one spot. Uh-oh, something's overloaded here. Is it plastic? Wouldn't surprise me. No, it's right here. Yeah, it's slightly too high. It's not obnoxiously so. But that's kind of what happens when resources are a little low. I would have hoped the settings would have canceled that out, but maybe not. We'll give it a little while and see what happens. So I went through the effort of calculating how we could grow some food items, turn it into corn, and then turn that corn into plastic bars. And actually quite a few plastic bars at that, but it's kind of a long process. It's not too bad. It's simpler than the way of making it from oil that we built, but there's a lot of steps. And then I was looking at trees here because we would need to get the cellulose fiber from somewhere, and then I realized that an arboretum consumes 500 pollution a minute. That's insane. And trees are a really easy thing to use up, because you just turn them into wood, so you don't have to worry about a ton of weird byproducts. So instead of maybe having the super dense tree area right here, these arboretums should be scattered across the factory, and then their trees will be delivered here to be chopped, because the actual trees are very dense and easy to ship. So maybe we should try that instead of this cool nifty setup. So I'm sad that I went through the effort of calculating that, and now we very well may not need it. But here we go. We have a couple of different tree things we can do. They all work the same. And we can also do seeds better. The way we're doing it now is soil and water. Go in and we get tree seeds out. But making that soil is quite difficult because of the amount of saline water we create. It's just very grindy. So if we add fertilizer to it, we go from 4 seeds to 6. Crafting speed is the same. And then if we're willing to add carbon dioxide to it, we will get 50% more. So now we have doubled the original amount of seeds and halved the amount of soil that had to go into it. It also makes the fertilizer more effective too. And we could do this anywhere. We wouldn't have to deliver all these items, because the only thing we would actually have to deliver are the things that go into the trees. So this would be one of them. And I suppose we could technically do the advanced version of trees, which we can get bioplastic, bioresin, or biorubber. I actually think that just getting trees is probably the most effective thing, because if we have too many of them, we can just turn them into fuel blocks. So it's actually not that big a deal. So we take those tree seeds and more soil, and the way we've been doing it now is 5 soil goes in with those seeds and we get 4 trees. But if we add fertilizer, the crafting speed is the same, but we get more trees. So this all stacks on top of itself because now that soil goes farther, but also the 2 tree seeds go farther and make 6 trees. And if we're willing to add nutrient pulp, we can get 8 trees. And there are more additional steps. We are already chopping the tree with the best saw blade. We get the same amount of wood from it, but the blades last longer. And then we have 2 more efficiencies we can increase on that. We can make the pulp, like right now, we're getting 20 pulp from 20 fiber by adding the alginic acid, but we can get 25 pulp out of it by adding pulping liquor and ammonia gas and water. Gives us brown liquor, which we'd have to deal with. And then we can get 30 pulp out of that by dealing with white and black liquor. And then on top of that, right now we're only doing the most basic way of pulp goes in and paper comes out, but we can get an additional paper by adding sodium hydroxide and chlorine, and we can get an additional paper on top of that by, instead of chlorine, adding oxygen and sulfur dioxide gas. So there's so many steps that layer on top of each other. Just as an example, what are we doing now? See, that flashing is continuing. Yeah, it looks like we're going to be a little overloaded on that. So for now, I'm just going to turn off the warning. And it looks like we're basically done building stuff, so I think over time this huge pollution cloud is going to subside. But we will be able to more actively make it subside with some of these tree farms. So 60 paper goes in and 30 come out. So right now our factory is doing 60 paper a second. So let's actually calculate that. What tier 1 of all of these things would give us. Well, we want 60 paper, that the input would need to be about 4 soil. So let's do another one. Doing the best of everything. There are more byproducts, yes, but to make that 60 paper, now we only need 0.75 soil compared to 4. So it's basically a fifth of the amount of soil goes into it to use those high tiers of everything. So that seems pretty good. But for now, how about we calculate just the trees themselves? That we want to do this with 4 arboretums, and we can put each one in a different chunk to maximize the cleaning effect. They would need a minor amount of everything here. All of this would be delivered by drone, or even robot, but I guess it depends on how close it is to a drone path. Actually, robot might make more sense, just because these could be placed literally anywhere if it's by robot, rather than having to worry about logistics and belts. Because it would make the factory pretty messy if every single place we put one of these, we would have to do belts like this coming from some path somewhere. Is it filled up again? Yep, this time it got too many titanium there, so that's kind of an issue. We'll have to see if that solves itself. So delivering all of those is relatively easy. The only thing that's a little weird is the nutrient pulp. But that actually can be made from anything. And currently our Binifran farm is making beans. And it's pretty inactive right now. The Binifran farm being the one that's next to green algae that makes our fuel for fuel blocks that we're no longer making. That this farm would be well qualified for supplying the beans. But the beans are a lot more dense than the pulp is, so we should probably just do that, and the nutrient extractor would be absolutely tiny. And the other aspect of this is these arboretums could either get pollution producing modules, which if we did would make it insane. It'd go up to a negative 38 a second. We could add the agricultural modules in there, but the purpose of this is to absorb pollution. So that's what we'd want to do. So then, now we would need a central location to handle all this stuff. Well, the soil's already being made from other places. We can just send them in. Same with fertilizer. Same with the beans. So the only thing we would need to do is the seeds. And that makes sense because it's the higher tier. And we'll just make it a clean machine here, because we want all of these machines to be as clean as possible, because anything that creates pollution is going to remove from the net benefit of all of this. So we want all of these machines as efficient as we can get them. And as far as the rest of this all comes from the factory. But we'd probably want a lot more than just like 4 of these. So let's do 40. So we assume we put 10 of these across the factory. What would we need? Well, more seed generators. But the modules would be the same, so this just gives us an idea of the size. Still, all these numbers are quite small. And this would steal from this setup, but it's also making the same thing as this setup. So this setup will run less often, so long as these other things are running. And then we would just take those trees, that's potentially 5 trees a second, and it would totally fit in here. That I don't think this is the final place of this. I definitely want to move it at some point, but I also don't want to go through the effort of rebuilding it when we're so close to gold science. We can grow these trees in random places and just put the resources back in, and it would be quite simple. Well, for now, actually, one thing we can do is just convert these seed generators to the new standard, because I want to fix this pollution problem with the least amount of work possible. Because I don't really want to rebuild all these trees right now. Although, we don't want pollution cleaning on these, because they actually consume pollution. So that's funny, that adding these speed modules, I wonder if adding the speed modules makes it consume more pollution. So it's at negative 375, so if we take one out, it's at 225. That's funny. That's so funny. That technically, the best thing we can do, it seems kind of broken, but the best thing we can do for this is probably add speed modules. Let's see, with nothing at all, it's negative 75, and then 2 speed modules makes it negative 555, and then pollution producing is actually less, so I should probably buff these pollution producing ones just so adding speed modules isn't better than them. That's hilarious. Well, if that's the case, then all of these setups should actually have speed modules in them. Oh my goodness. Negative 500 a second. Yes, that is good. And it's also going to be way more items going in, but that's fine. So one interesting thing about fertilizer, maybe less interesting and more annoying, is that the recipe changed. So our factory is actually out of fertilizer now. And I kind of remember that from forever ago. This is one of those recipes that was changed with the Angels update. And most of the recipes got fixed, because I remember like all of this ammo stuff was messed up. But the one thing that didn't, because it was a permanent change, was fertilizer. By the time we get all this set up, the pollution cloud's probably going to be gone. But oh well. Now fertilizer only has one input, and that's from compost and urea. I think before this was a chemical fertilizer that required no input of compost, but now we have to do it. But we can make compost from our Benefran setup here, which totally makes a ton of compost. So although it may not be making fuel anymore, we can find things for this setup to continue to contribute to the factory. Let's calculate it from here, because the trees will also need their own fertilizer, so we're going to need a reasonable amount of it, and that's going to be 70 urea gas. So urea is actually coming from this one machine here, and it's tiny. And it looks like it's all based on the one urea part, which is 90. So it totally could. Let's get that updated so our factory will continue to have fertilizer. Okay then, well, this is a lot of junk that doesn't need to be here anymore. Oop, there they are. That was fast. I guess it's really not that far away. And there we go. Make sure this thing is going at full blast. But I guess it is. The machine is only running at half speed here because it's limited on this other stuff. But I suppose right out of the gate, we can just upgrade these machines. I'm just hoping we get all this taken care of before, oh my goodness, the pollution is gone, but I think there's a lot of it. So we're not in any particular time crunch to clear out the pollution. I think it's going to stay with us for a while. Okay, well, it's faster now. Seems like it's mostly going at full blast. And there it is. I guess we'll ride the truck back to push it faster. And that's pretty good with the speed. There we go. They're running. Their speeds are good. And they have speeds to use up more pollution. That's just crazy. That's how that works, but looking good. Now we are making a bunch of tree seeds. Now it's time for our arboretums. And we have this set to 40, but ultimately we will just build them in sets of 4 with one nutrient extractor nearby to grab the beans. So that will require some amount of drone, or maybe we do robots, since the relative amount of resources is limited. Ultimately, we'll get the best performance out of this if we put each arboretum in a different chunk. And the way we can do that is hit F4 to decide what always shows. That'll be easier than just having it on debug mode. And we'll say show tile grid. So that shows us each individual square, but also where the chunks meet. And we'll just use this for planning purposes, and later we'll figure out where to place it. But we need to keep in mind that when we do place this stuff, we're going to want to place it in one of these meeting points. So we have 4. So we're going to definitely want each one to be clearly in its own chunk. I don't think we have to space them out like this, but it might make more sense. And there should be... Yep, it's kind of hard to tell with that little doodad sticking up, but something like this. And we have all of these different types of trees we can grow, but we just want to grow the normal ones. Copy it over. Speed modules. And then we need to get the inputs and outputs, but having it spaced by 2 isn't friendly for that. So let's actually move things back by 1 on each side here. That will allow the belts to come down the middle, and then they're both still spaced. We will need the pulp maker, which can be right there. And it does need a reasonable amount of soil and will produce a reasonable amount of trees, but the seeds and the fertilizer are fairly limited in scope. But we could also bring them by drone close and then have robots do the final mile, as you might say, to get it to where it needs to go. And it would basically be that. I think we've got it covered. Relatively simple thing, but some alignment indicators might help. We kind of want something that is exactly the size of a tile, that's easy to see at a glance. Maybe like that, because these belts go through one, which we can easily see, and then those go through one, which we can easily see. Okay, we've got something here. Let's just copy it. Might as well leave the grid on. So we'd want to put it close to the road, but also somewhere that's close to the chunks. And you can see here that these chunks in the middle are like the perfect distance for not doing this, so it's not particularly convenient to put it up there. But we do have a road down here, and the pollution does move quite quickly. It is worse up here, but ultimately it just goes from high to low. And we have 10 of these, like we can put one up here too. But for now, we've got a nice little space in here, and we probably can just get rid of this. And the robot zone will be fine. Oh, for sure. So we have our setup now, and we want to line it up, so get the horizontal lined up, get the vertical lined up, and there we go. Everything else will get here soon. And now that we have this placed, we can get some beans in here. We might actually need to put it on a drone. Not sure exactly how many. Probably just one stack of them will be more than enough. Yeah, they're not available, which doesn't surprise me. But this is so close to a road, why not use it? So 3 requesters for the various items. And then 1 supply for the trees. And actually, this stuff more or less lines up. And it lines up here too. Well, this would be nice if this was something we could copy as well. And the trees being supplied. We want it to fill up as high as it'll go, but it's a byproduct, which means we want to have a limiter on here, because otherwise they'll send a drone for even a single tree. So to keep them from constantly making trips, we'll set a limit, but how many trees go in a stack? I would never know. And which tree is it? Let's just do tree seed, so we can click on this. The product is the tree. It stacks in 200. So it needs to be false when there's no inputs, and less than 1,000. Pretty good. We could probably turn off the grid now. It would be nice if we had a setup of supply depots and we can just kind of copy them where they made sense. So this one gets picked up, moved over. Asking for beans. one drone. It's going to be a little delayed compared to everyone else. And this just combines right there with the trees and goes in. And there you go. And now we wait. Don't go away, pollution. It's like the first time I'm like, no, the pollution, please stay. I need you. We're testing something. So it's almost 1,000 pollution here. So even though our production of pretty much everything here has slowed down, pollution is still bad. It's kind of funny how it gets foggy in there when the trees are going. So what's the pollution at? Oh wow, it's going down fast. It was at what, 1,000 like a few seconds ago? And now we're producing trees, and there's 4 different chunks here. And all 4 of them are low. So the pollution is really bad in this one spot, so it's kind of hard to tell. But if we go over here and say show pollution values, we'll actually have an idea of what's happening. So you can see how quickly these are going down, even compared to the tiles that are right next door, are like in the high 800s. And this is very quickly going down. Essentially, it's going to get to 0, and that's as far as it can go. So right now they're running in their most efficient state because they're just eating pollution. But they will eventually get to the point where we'll actually be able to see something here. I'm going to turn that off again, because that is a lot of indicators when you zoom out like this. But yeah, let's just let it run for a second and then see what it looks like. We'll have to trace it back to see exactly how much mud this will end up being, because it needs to come from soil. And actually, now that I think about it, we could make soil from washed sand. It requires twice as much compost, but it would not create the huge amount of saline water. But I guess at the time we were just kind of throwing it away, so we didn't care. And that would, yeah, create tons of saline water. But sand would also create some amount of mud. So if we had both setups running and just preferred to use the mud would be consumed first. And any extra trees would just be turned into blocks, and then those blocks would be consumed. Wow, down to 200 now, and it's definitely going down slower. See, it's only ticking down by like 0.5 per second. And let's check the pollution values again. It's kind of hard to zoom out. I bet that's because all of the pollution is just feeding into these chunks here, that it's getting really hard for these to drain it down. You can put 10 of those all over the factory. We don't really have to worry too much about the logic, and just put it at the pollution producers, which I think would be the circuit setup right here produces a ton. Certainly the intermediates bus. I don't think the main bus really does. Science produces it a little. And then certainly down here at our resource production. Well, a bit of the problem with upgrading this to work on washed sand is that in doing so would add components to this that would then later be replaced when we moved it. So I kind of feel like if we're going to do this washed sand, we should just do it somewhere else. And we already have some washed sand that makes spinifran. So since we've already gone through that setup, why not reuse it? And I bet it produces quite a bit of it. All of this together will make, oh yeah, 67 sand. And we have some of the compost right there. If we wanted to make all of this from sand, what would we need? Well, quite a few machines. But we want to try to cancel out its pollution properties. So if we did that, we would need 10 of them, which actually isn't that bad. Fortunately, though, there isn't really a cute little spot to put it. How about we do it in this little gap right here, because it exists. Since we're not actively using blues anymore, let's switch it over to purple, and I think it was set up this way because of inserter and belt limitations, so it looks really funny right now. But good enough, we'll just use the purple the whole way. And this would actually be the primary source of soil, so we'd want to remove any other depots that are supplying soil. So we make sure the right one is doing the work. But here we go. And it's very fast. And soil's one of the things we have the most of. So we have 2 supply depots, the one we're at, and this other one is down at trees, so let's get rid of that one. This will be nice to have these arboretums scattered around, just constantly making trees and clearing up pollution. Man, that's going to dump a lot of soil into the network, because there's 20,000 in there. Well, the player bots can't deal with that because that's too much. And my computer keeps hiccuping. I've been noticing that. It's not a UPS thing. So I've been checking. And see, it's doing it again. Like, it goes down to like 45 and then stops. So you look at the update time. It's only like a fraction of a frame. But you look at the frame cycle, that it's way higher for some reason. Did it again. I'll have to take a look at it, but I've been looking at this screen whenever it happens, and I really don't see any reason why it should be taking that long. It's just like the frame rate goes down. And I have the task manager open looking at CPU usage, and sometimes you see little spikes, but not major ones. So I'm really worried here. Yeah, something is going on with my computer. I already restarted it, so I know it's not that. And how is the pollution doing there? Well, there's a big hole. But ultimately, we need to figure out 9 more places to put these. And the further apart, the better. And the closer they are to the original pollution sources, the better. Okay, well, we have something to copy. We're not sure how far down or far away the drone path might be. But we know it's going to be at least this. Let's find a blueprint to use. How about this one? Looking good. And we're making use of that Binifran farm. That it's essentially going to be doing almost nothing now that we're fully relying on nuclear and have diverted those plastic resources to a different setup. And it kind of sucks to have a big thing that's sitting there and it's built, but you can't use it for anything. So doing this is a nice diversion of resources to something else that's useful. I'm very glad that those alignment indicators are there, so then we can just place it. And since it's near a road and the road so happens to be beneath it, we can also copy the drone stuff. Just line that up and put it down. Push the belts forward. And then whenever the drones get here, this thing will fire up, whatever that is. So I am going to get to work making 8 more of these, and I'll be back in a bit. Okay, I'm back. I've placed 9 of them so far. Don't ask me where I placed them. I forgot already. But before we continue, I wanted to mention the results of my research to figure out what the lag drops were for. And I was looking online. Different forums said different things. But you notice now the game update's a lot lower. That I was noticing that when the spikes were happening, it was because the game update was spiking, and specifically the entity update was spiking. Entity update is a very broad thing that includes lots of different stuff. So I was looking online to see what people are talking about. Some said trains, and some said like steam engines and stuff, and radars, and I don't have that much of that stuff. But one thing that resonated with me is biters. Biters. That is something we have a lot of. And then I went through the settings to see what kind of settings are related to biters that we potentially could fix. And in Rampant, they have a lot of nicely sorted settings where they tell you exactly what each thing does. So like projectiles, world, map, safety. So scroll down. Optimization. You have my attention. And I remember the setting from before. You can remove blood particles to reduce lag spikes. And I don't even remember what the blood particle looked like. But reduce lag spikes. But you have to change it and then restart. So I can't change it now to show you. But I selected that. And I think that fixed it. I watched the recording and I noticed that the turrets were firing right when these lag spikes were hitting. So I was like, I wonder if that'll fix it. So now I've noticed, I don't know if this is a change of that setting, but I kind of remember the corpses lasting for a while, but now they just sort of disappear. Maybe they did that before and I just didn't notice it. But they seem to disappear quite quickly now. But hopefully that fixes it. The factory is getting bigger and bigger, and the bigger your factory is, the more attention you have to pay to making sure the UPS is manageable. But that would be terrible if it was biters making it not 60 FPS. Honestly, if that was the case, I would straight up delete the biters from the save to keep it smooth. But I like to have them as long as things can remain smooth. But ultimately, placing these tree farms was a lot easier than I was expecting. I thought it would take forever, but it really didn't. So I wanted to show you the process about how simple it was. So I have the grid on. So the 3 things we need is an area with a nearby road, the center of 4 chunks that we can put it on, and also something that's not super close to a farm. So I picked this. There are farms over here, but they don't really run that much anymore. So it's not as much of a problem, but it's sufficiently far away where I think it's fine either way. So we orient this, we flip it around and put the belts towards the road, and then these alignment indicators. So here's the vertical axis. We align it along that, and then align it along the horizontal to get it right in the middle. And there's 1 square of play in either direction if it's in the wrong spot, but we want it to be lined up, so all you have to do is click. They will be placed, and then I had copied the drone depots here, and aw, well, there's a problem. But actually it's fine. There's just 1 extra road there, so this actually works. So we'll place it, and have to remember that this doesn't automatically connect the wire, so we'll want to do that. And that's all there is to it. So there's 10 of them now, scattered around. Like there's one, I can kind of see it, it stands out. Although I already noticed an issue, so I might need to check them all anyway. That depending on how it's rotated, that pump might not line up. That one needs it. That one needs it. Guess you're going to see where they all are anyway, because I have to find them. So many of them need this. That's really annoying. I did 5 in the south and 5 in the north. Wow, I did every single one of them to the side here. I really did, didn't I? Yes, I did. All but one were sideways. Anyway, now that it's been switched, it's slowly working on those trees. And you can see this one is in full effect. Completely cleared out the pollution, and certainly when there is pollution, they will make their presence known by the pollution holes that they create. But that's the best we can do. And, you know, if we need even more of them, I suppose we will make even more of them. But that's what we calculated to begin with, so that's what we'll do. And I suppose we should make sure that these things are nice and pollution friendly. And we've already calculated that out. 1 speed, 3 efficiencies, and a pollution cleaning. So without checking the numbers too hard, let's just do that with every one of these setups. Including that plate chopper. Because there's no point in doing all of this if it's actually creating pollution and contributing to the problem. And this is going to create a massive amount of bricks. I mean, which is good. It's free resources, free power, and it's energy efficient power. Now, burning them does consume a little bit of pollution, but my guess is it's actually not going to be that bad. Let's just put another 10 drones in there, I suppose. That while burning the bricks, there's no increase in pollution levels. It's just normal pollution. And how much does a group of 8 of these use? Well, I was hoping they would all have blocks in them. What about this? Alright, 3.76. Each one makes 15 pollution a second, so it's actually substantial when you add all of them together. It's the last resort that we're trying every other use of bricks, so going into charcoal and going into carbon dioxide as well. You can see the pollution holes start to form. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the 10th one there is just waiting on its beans. Or no, it has its beans, it's just the belt is messed up. So this has got to be better for pollution than not doing it. And it seems like it would be significantly better. And in fact, once we get this going, we can take a look at the pollution consumption chart and see where it's all going. Yeah, some of these things were in very weird areas, like going right over the Bobmodium train here. But there we go. Reducing pollution by 10 every second. And then in about 30 seconds or so, the pollution hole is starting to form. And that's as good as they can get. So, what are we looking at? Well, looking at the past 10 minutes, you can definitely see where previously trees were using 2.5 pollution or so, and then boom, 17,000. And it's going down a little bit because the factory's pollution level's going down. And that spike is when we first ran that 10th Arboretum setup. But now it's starting to go down as well. So like zooming out to 10 hours, you can really see the difference where Arboretums were generally the highest thing, but they were never that high. But then boom, and now they're going down. So what are the biggest consumers? Arboretum, tiles, trees, the desert farms, and now we're getting into the spawners, which are pretty small. So the biggest spawner is absorbing 354 a minute, whereas our Arboretums are doing about 4,000. And that's just the Arboretums. So I'm feeling pretty good about this, that they're going to probably clear out quite a bit of pollution. Nonetheless, these tiles are probably a big help. That the more tiles we place, just the more it helps, and the more pollution we can counteract, the more productivity modules we can use without being afraid of the biter's wrath. So let's find some other huge swaths of area to add all these tiles to. Because I'm sure they help when you have millions of them in the factory. Well, that's a lot of tiles. So we'll leave the bots to it, and then let our Arboretums continue to clear things out, and then later on, if we need to place 10 more, we can place 10 more. But the burners are going now. Combination of lots of bricks and lots of alien orbs, and the alien orbs are especially good because they make no pollution at all. More detours, but that's what happens. It seems like we get detoured with things, but we were doing that because of the crazy amount of pollution that we got from all this low density structure. But we've got it now, which means it's time to calculate our science packs. But that's going to have to wait till the next episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later.